EMR, computerized provider order entry, creating a new prescription. An essential part of every medical practice is the ability of prescribing medications to their patients. The Prognosis prescription module has multiple videos here on the Resource Center. This specific one is going to demonstrate how to create a simple prescription. Now, it is recommended that you complete the required setup, such as your preferred drugs and preferred pharmacies, prior to creating a prescription. This would be based on local workflow and is not mandatory, but it does make the workflow easier. The first part of creating the prescription would be to select an open encounter. A separate video is going to address refills, which do not require an encounter. And then on the prescription screen, you first identify the prescription type, meaning is it going to be a sample, an in-house dispensed drug, or one that you actually send the patient to the pharmacy. Then you have two options for entering your dispensable drug details. There is a direct drug data entry for one drug at a time, or a multiple drug search and select option. Within the course of any prescription, there is automated eligibility and drug formulary based on meaningful use requirements. And then the save and approve process will depend on who is ordering the prescription. For instance, physicians by default have automatic approval permissions. If you would like to give a non-doctor, such as a nurse, permissions to write prescriptions, they also can be given the approval right, and it would be recommended to activate the supported event, which will generate the appropriate remark to the doctor. Also, during the approval process is when drug-drug and drug allergy interactions validation will take place. To complete the prescription, it will be based on the drug type. You can print it to a hard copy, fax it to the pharmacy, or e-prescribe. The electronic prescription of controlled substances will also be handled in a separate video. So in this first example, I've toggled into Prognosis as Dr. Sheldon Cooper, and we're just going to create a simple prescription on a new patient. Now, we discussed the field definitions and the navigating this screen in our overview video. So in this example, we're simply going to complete the prescription. I have got my settings defined so that nothing is pre-populating. Therefore, with our prescription screen, it is completely blank. So for Jamal, I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a pharmacy prescription. We see that Jamal does not have any preferred pharmacies, so I'm going to go ahead and do my lookup. And since Jamal lives in New York, we're going to go ahead and narrow it down to the retail pharmacies in the state of New York and in the city of New York. And we're just going to go ahead there and choose Battery Park Pharmacy. Now remember from the overview video, I have two options as far as entering the drugs. I can enter the drug details one at a time here by using my keyboard and the autocomplete of the first data library. Or if I want to add more than one drug, I can use one of my search options. Since we do recommend that you have predefined your preferred drugs prior to implementing the prescription module, that is usually going to be their quicker option in your workflow. So I'm just going to go ahead and give Jamal his Lamictal, and we'll give him some acetaminophen. Now, since I have predefined my dispensable details, I don't have to worry about coming up here and modifying my details. I can simply click Save. Since I am logged in as the doctor with automatic approval rights, my confirmation is going to say Save and Approve Successful. And now that my drug type is filled in as ERX, my pharmacy is got the ERX label, I know that I can go ahead and complete my prescription by clicking the ERX icon. That in turn brings up my confirmation page so that I can just verify I'm prescribing everything the way I want. I'm going to click the send button. And this time my confirmation is going to come up and inform me that the SureScript has accepted the prescription successfully and it is now pending. Down here in my drug details table, I have the check mark in front of the drug name as well as the ERX label indicating that those drugs were completed successfully via SureScript. So that's all there is to completing a prescription. It's entirely up to you if you want to do the direct data entry one drug at a time or use one of the multiple search options at the bottom. Now in the case of an existing patient, you have the option of defining the default property so that instead of blank, your screen actually auto defaults from the previous encounter. So we see in our case of Jax Teller, we've already got our Fairfax, Virginia pharmacy defined, whereas with Jamal Lyon, there was no pharmacy pre-selected. Now for an existing patient, we have the same options of using the direct data entry in our dispensable drug details one at a time, or the multiple search and select down here at the bottom. But notice we also have the Past RX button here at the bottom of our details table, and this actually brings up the patient's current medication, including the prescriptions that may be eligible for refill. So if these are the medications that Jax needs to have a new prescription for today, instead of doing the direct data entry one drug at a time or using one of the multiple search options we've already discussed, the doctor can come in here and select the applicable checkbox for each drug, and that will fill out the prescription screen. And then we can complete the prescription. So as we saw here, logged in as a doctor, the save and approve is completed at the same time. When a physician would like to have his clinical staff, such as a nurse, have the ability of entering prescriptions, this can be granted at a user role level, and the doctor can decide locally whether you want that clinician to also be able to approve or not. And that will determine, in conjunction with the supported event property, whether or not the physician has to also, behind the nurse, approve the prescription, or if an informational notification will be sent to the doctor letting him know that a clinician has created as well as approved a prescription. So I've logged in here as my nurse Penny, and I've opened up a chart for our existing patient, Annalise Keating. And just as with the physician, our local properties will determine whether or not this screen is going to be pre-populated. We do see here in the case of Annalise, her pharmacy has carried over. Now let's say that Annalise is only here for an ibuprofen refill. So Penny is just going to go ahead and type it in instead of using the search options. Now Penny does not have the ability to approve, so when I click save, my message simply says save successful. Whereas in the case of Dr. Cooper, it says save and approve. So now, if we log back in as Dr. Cooper, based on the supported events that I have defined, Dr. Cooper is getting this alert message from the system that he needs to approve the prescription for Annalise Keating. Now, if you notice right below, for Matt Casey, the informational message says approved. And if we look over here on our types, there's a difference between an alert and a notification. The alert that does not have the D on the end tells the doctor he must approve it. So he can click the magnifying glass, review the prescription that Penny has entered, and at this point the doctor can decide to just click save, which will approve it as is, or he can make any necessary changes, and then the prescription can be completed. Whereas in the case of Matt Casey, where it was already approved, it is informational, so he can still click it to review it, but the prescription will already be completed in this instance. So that again is also going to be based on your workflow as to whether or not the non-provider has the ability of approving, or if you have to approve it as the physician. Now, one last thing I want to mention, we did not cover the formulary status, the prescription eligibility, or drug-drug interaction, which all could be part of a prescription. Those are tied to meaningful use requirements and are therefore covered in a separate video. You will notice here on the screen, we have a formulary status indicator as well as the eligibility button, and there's a series of alerts that come up when indications are present. So please be sure to check out that video for those particular scenarios. So in review, when creating prescriptions, it is recommended that you do the appropriate setup before you start using the module. This would include setting up your preferred drugs and preferred pharmacy. Now this isn't mandatory, but it does make your workflow more efficient. You then want to select an open encounter, identify your prescription type and select the pharmacy. Enter your drug details, and this would be based on local preference as to whether you want to do it individually through the drug details data entry autocomplete section or using one of your local searches for multiple search and selection. If you're logged in as a non-doctor, remember to follow the workflow in conjunction with the supported events as to whether or not the non-provider user has approval rights, and if the doctor needs to respond to the alert to approve the prescription, or if he simply receives an informational notification. And then finally, you want to generate the prescription based on the drug type.